Hi, my name is Kennedy, and I'm a student from Kanazawa University. I'll be making a presentation about greenhouse climate, and the two topics I'm going to talk about it's what explains the world 100 million years ago, and the second one, why were sea levels higher 80 to 100 million years ago. Now, this presentation is divided into two parts. The second one will be handled by my colleague and classmate, Mrs. Tara. So, let's get deep into it. Now, we're going to have a brief introduction of the greenhouse climate and what it means. So, it says that Earth geography is much easier to construct for 100 million years ago than for earlier times. That's due to much more data from the period ranging from 100 million years ago to the present period than of earlier periods, like especially before 175 million years ago. So, this allows scientists to decipher continental margins, shapes, geographical locations, and the fact that there was no permanent ice cap at the South Pole 100 million years ago due to global warming conditions. So, we have evidence that there was no ice cap in the South Pole, especially, and that it's evidence enough to conclude that the world was a greenhouse world at the time. So, it was a much warmer world than today and supported no ice cap, permanent ice cap in the poles, both north and south poles. This knowledge of the past climate makes us ponder some questions and investigate some existing evidence. And which are these questions? We should ponder. There are three questions. Was this warm caused by high carbon dioxide level in the atmosphere? That's the first question. The second one, the fact of the giant asteroid impact 65 million years ago. What was the effect of this impact on the climate at the period during the Cretaceous, at the end of the Cretaceous? We know that the asteroid impact killed most of the fauna and the flora at the period, especially the fauna, causing the extinction of most of the dinosaur species at the time, with exception of the flying dinosaurs, which some species, small ones, survived and evolved into other species of especially birds. And the third one, what caused the brief interval of unusual warmth 55 million years ago. Now, um, we know that during the greenhouse world, there was like a brief interval with the planet kind of cool down. So what caused this interval, this brief interval around 55 million years ago? Now we're going to get deep into this and we will learn what what caused these phenomenons, and we'll try to answer these questions. So let's continue. Um, we're going to talk about the model simulations of the Cretaceous greenhouse. We know that in order to uh, the understand how the climate operate, our climate during that period, we need to make model simulation. And how to make a model simulation? You need to collect some data, um, data such as the geographical location of the continents during that period. We know the planets have, sorry, the continents, they are constantly moving due to plate tectonics, and the sea level during that time, and the CO2 level in the atmosphere during that time. So we need to collect all these data and or at least have like an approximate value of these data in order to run a simulation and try to understand why was the climate so warm during that period. Now, it says Pangea started breaking apart 175 million years ago, and by 100 million years ago, all continents had completely split apart. The global sea levels were 80 to 100 meters higher than today, and flooding continental margins and low-lying inland areas. So we can see in the picture on the right side, we can see that most of the current geographical space that is occupied by the continents, especially on the coastlines, it was flooded, and we have some areas, inland areas, that was also flooded during that period. That indicates higher sea levels. And we know that during this period, which is known as Cretaceous, meaning abundance of chalk because of a lot of marine sediments made of carbonate, calcium carbonate, and these sediments were found, you know, in the sea, and they were deposited during that period. So, and it is very important to scientists due to geological evidence of lack of permanent ice anywhere on Earth, including Antarctica. There was no ice whatsoever during this period. Other evidence of a warming climate during this period is the plethora of fossil indicators found in the northern hemisphere, including broad-leaf evergreen trees and cold-blooded animals as far as the Arctic. We have a picture here um, of the fossils found as far as in Arctic as well as in Antarctica, and this proves that we know that the broad-leaved plants only survive in mostly tropical areas, so they cannot survive in colder climates. But why were there in that region, in Arctic regions, and why were cold-blooded animals in the Arctic region? That indicates that the climate during that period and those locations were considerably warm to allow these animals and plants to thrive in these locations. So it says in the 1980s, climate modeler Eric Barron and colleagues pioneered the search for explanation of the worm 100 million years ago, running general circulation models, also known as GCM, simulations to reconstruct plate tectonics during Cretaceous. So these researchers, Eric Barron and his colleagues, they kind of pioneered this method of modeling the climate back in Cretaceous using general circulation model. Bonder shows that temperatures near the equator 100 million years ago were a few degrees higher than those today. Now, it says at the North Pole, the temperature was around 20 degrees Celsius higher than today, and 40 degrees Celsius higher at the South Pole due to absence of ice sheets. We know that uh, there's a difference between the current temperature in the North and South Pole. You know that the South Pole is much colder than the North Pole. So that's why there's a difference between the temperature at that period, with the North Pole being like around 20 degrees Celsius warmer and the South Pole being 40 degrees warmer during that period in today's. Now, we have a graphic showing the difference between temperature according to latitudes. We know that um, the regions near the equator, they have like a higher temperature, and the regions farther from the equator, they have a lower temperature. But we have like a two, um, we have two data, one from the present era showing that the poles are much colder today, and the one from the mid Cretaceous showing that the poles were much warmer during that time, which means that during winter it could get cold, it could even support some highs, but those highs were not permanent. As soon as summer start, and those highs would melt down. So he says at the North Pole, another two simulations was done, taking CO2 into consideration. In the first simulation, CO2 levels were kept at pre-industrial levels. Results showed a much lower temperature at the poles than it would be possible during the Cretaceous or mid-Cretaceous period. So this this simulation, this model did not work with the CO2 levels being kept at pre-industrial levels, which was around 280 parts per million. Now, the second one, the researchers, they set the CO2 levels at 4 times higher than pre-industrial levels. around 1,000 parts per million. Now, the simulation models the results came showing that the temperature at the poles diminished, but the tropics warmed up significantly more than they expected, which would not be realistic. Now, we have the data model comparisons on the right side here, showing um, the results, and we can see the relation between the latitude and the temperature. So let's move on. We're going to talk about the relevance of past greenhouse climates to the future. Results from studies of Cretaceous climate can tell us about the effect of carbon dioxide Earth current state. Now, we know that the pre-industrial CO2 levels, as I mentioned already, are at 280 parts per million. This allowed for an average global temperature of 15 degrees Celsius and a constant coverage of ice sheet at the Arctic, not mentioning the ice sheath in the Antarctic, which is much bigger. Now, the GCM model shows that if carbon dioxide reached nearly 1,000 parts per million, temperature would rise to an average of 22 degrees Celsius, like almost 7 degrees rise globally, and the Arctic would not contain any ice sheet, turning the planet into a greenhouse world. So this could be compared with the greenhouse world during the Cretaceous, but at the simulation it shows that um, the tropic region near the equator they would warm up significantly, which would not be a realistic condition, for the world during that time. So we have the graphic here showing the effect of carbon dioxide on global temperature. We see that um, with less carbon dioxide level on the atmosphere, we have lower temperature globally, and with more CO2 levels in the atmosphere, we have higher temperature. Now, moving on, the next question we're going to ask is why were sea levels higher 80 to 100 million years ago? It says over the tectonic time scale, sea levels have risen and fallen by around 200 meters or more against the margins of continents. And these changes are called regressions, which means when the sea level falls, and transgressions when the sea level rises. Now, when sea level is low, the coastline tends to sit near a topographic break between flat and steeper continental shelf, and this allows erosion to prevail. Sediment is then carried and dispersed into the ocean, which can reduce the total surface of the ocean and then trigger an effect of more water rising up. So it's kind of like a cycle that keeps on going on. We show here the figure on the right side uh, showing this effect. So in the Cretaceous, the coastlines and interior of most continents were flooded. We know this. We saw the figure in the previous slide showing like the global continental um, sea limits margins and which parts showing that all the margins of the continents, especially during that period, was flooded, and even some interior parts of the continent flooded during that period. So the rise in sea level 100 to 80 million years ago were attributed to two factors. The first one, tectonically driven changes that alter the volume of the ocean basins and their capacity to hold water. The second one, changes in the volume of water in the ocean basins caused by variations in climate. Now, we're going to check these 2 points and try to understand how these contributed to the rise in sea levels during the Cretaceous around 100 to 80 million years ago. So, first one is change in the volume of the ocean basins. Now, changes in the volume of the or ocean ridges. That's the first factor. Changes in the volume of ocean ridges. I say ocean ridges are formed due to heating from molten material below the surface of the ocean crust, causing rocks to expand and of surface ocean crust to rise. So we know this by looking into how plate tectonics work. So we know that when two plates are converging, especially in the sea, they cause a ridge, like a section of the seafloor to rise up. And this can occupy some surface, and by occupying surface, it causes the water level to rise because this would be this ridge would occupy a space that was previously occupied by a certain volume of water. Now, the size of ridge profile effect on sea levels 180 million years ago is now well known because of lack of data. But still, we know that this can affect the rise or fall of sea level, the ridges, the mid-ocean ridges. Moving on, we have the second and the third one, which was not mentioned previously, but it's worth mentioning the third option. Now, the second one is the collision of the continents. It says when continents collide, the continental crust doubles in thickness and creates a high plateau. This thickness reduces the original area of continent and increases the area of the ocean basins. This causes sea level to fall. We have here, like in the graphic here, we in the pictures here, we have how this can contribute to the fall of the sea level. Basically, when two continental shelves, continental plates collide, now it causes like it can cause a subduction, or it can cause a convergence of the plates, which rises up. When this happens, the seafloor will expand significantly. So the space that was once occupied by continental shelf, it's more or less empty now, which means more water is pouring into that section, and then the sea level will fall due to this phenomenon, this action. Now, the third one is the transfer of continental sediments to the ocean. Now, we know that due to erosion, coastal erosion, or due to river transport of sediments from the continental shelf to the ocean shelf, if this activity is carried out in a long period of time, um, we can have a large amount of sediment displaced from the continental shelf into the sea, which is then spread out in the seafloor, and they can pile up there for a long time. We know this because we have a lot of islands that were formed, especially in river deltas, through this activity. Now, we have all these sediments getting spread out and piling up in the ocean floor, and they occupy surface that was once occupied by water. Now, by this activity, we have the sea level rising up because more sediments is occupying a space that was previously occupied by water, and it causes the sea level to rise up. Now, this is my presentation, and the second part will be done by Mrs. Tara. Thank you so much, and have a nice day.